Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, councillors. Welcome to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for the 23rd of July 2024. Please be advised that this is a public meeting and is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. Item 1, any declarations of interest? None. Item 2, apologies for absence and re-substitutes.
Chairman, we have apologies from Councillor Morrell, Councillor Tovell and Councillor Wymark. There are no substitutes.
Thank you. Item 3, minutes of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting held on the 9th of July. Do we have any comments, alterations or concerns about anything within those minutes? Nope. Thank you. Item 4, Chairman's announcements. I have nothing to announce other than the fact that you will be aware of the summer and obviously the work programme coming up. So I know this is being mentioned today, but if anybody has any items they want to bring up, I would just remind people that they are welcome to submit a topic form, which will then allow Sinead to sort of filter through and work out whether we actually need to do something or whether it's actually something that the council can do something about, and see whether that can come before the committee. We have an item on the agenda that today is very much related to the fact that somebody wanted that. So if there's something you're thinking about, yeah, somebody isn't there. I won't say no persistently, but you have, no, exactly, this is what the committee's here to allow that sort of level of questioning. So just a reminder of those things. Item 5, public speaking.
There's no public speaking, Chairman.
Okay, we move then on to the update from the portfolio holder for finance, Councillor Riley, Steve, who wants feedback on something which we've talked about many months ago now, but finally something has come to fruition.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and thanks for the invite, Ernest, for an update on this. As you recall, back in January, this came up under a report from Lee's second name officer. No, Lee gave the report. Lee Jones. And I think when Ernest listened to the report, and including myself as well, it seemed that this had a real benefit economically for business in a really direct way. But of course, the job had been funded on a temporary basis. It's jointly funded with South Norfolk, and that time was coming to an end. So I said that we'd have a look at it and obviously speak to officers in terms of its worth, etc., which did. So followed through on this with the officer team, and indeed spoke to the economic portfolio holder about it as well. And the job does have some real direct benefits for business, and the role and function is regulatory service, economic development, comes under that heading, and it's business regulatory support hub coordinator, which is part-time. There's that function within that report that was given. So met with South Norfolk Finance, and they also agreed to finance the position as well, on the same basis, temporarily, to see how we go. We've already set the budget for the year, so this is not a new post. We could function in that way, and we was really on top of the budget setting for the year. And we are financing it via the new availability contingency fund, which was agreed at the full council meeting when we set the budget, and that's on a 45-55 split. So that fund's come in well handy in terms of that contingency there. We could pull upon that fund, and that will support business. So the job has been advertised. It was advertised some time back. It was re-advertised because we didn't have any people applying. There's been a candidate recently who's got very close to taking the job, but suddenly just dropped out. And I spoke to the officer today about it. So we are going to re-advertise it again, because this happens with jobs within council at the moment. Some of them do stay vacant for some time. The officer that was in the role, who has a right to progress within the council, did apply for another internal job within the council. So he's progressed forward into a full-time role, which happened about a month after the ONS meeting. So seems to be doing well in that. And that role had been vacant for some time. So it is difficult to fill some of these council jobs at the moment. So it's going to be re-advertised. This will be the third time, I think, and we'll proceed on that basis. So I think that was a good exercise on that day of ONS and report we had, and followed through on it. Does seem a really well worth role to carry on with.
You're terrible at that, Steve. You've learned how to press the button once, but not twice. We just need to. Thank you for that. I know this committee felt very strongly that that position was really worthwhile and needed supporting. I know that you were in agreement at the meeting. We didn't have to sort of really have your arm up behind your back or take a lot of persuading because the evidence was there about how important this role is. We, even at the last meeting, Councillor Hempsell, who was here as a substitute, raised the idea that we need someone who does that role. And we said, yes, that's exactly what we agree, because obviously she's not normally on this committee, so probably isn't as aware of all the ins and outs of these things. But, you know, other councillors, as soon as they are in the situation we're in, they see that, you know, when you see the data and the reports and about small and medium-sized businesses and about how, you know, how many startups there are. And I know Councillor Empsall was talking about the number of people in employment at the last meeting, which we sort of could see perhaps might be declining because of a growing ageing population, but it could also be because of other economic factors. And I think everybody sees the value in this position. So hopefully we'll get someone into that role as soon as possible. But thank you ever so much for responding.
Of course, ensure with the officers that the real functionality of it, and that came across really clearly. And we will have to review this because it is temporary funding to see how that's working out, because the actual role fits in with, you know, business registering. So we'd have to see how those registrations go. It really is dovetails into registrations, so we'll have to see how that goes in terms of the future. So that's, yeah, thanks, Nick.
Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? I think people just need to be quite happy that we've got somewhere with this. So thank you very much. Yeah, it will. Yeah, that's not way off yet. Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you very much for that. We'll move on to item 7 then, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee work programme, which Sinead will talk to us about. Thank you, Sinead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So there's been a number of new items added to the work programme with the agreement of the Chair. So the first is review of support for young people, and you'll see we've scheduled that for September this year, and we'll be inviting a number of representatives from the Youth Advisory Board and other key partners to come give evidence, so that will be good for the committee. We've also added the annual budget questions and joint budget meeting with Cabinet, so that will be in November, and the joint budget meeting will be in January. And we've also added the housing allocations policy, so this is the annual review, and that's been added for March 2025.
Thank you very much for that. Anybody got anything else you want to ask or just note around that? No? Thank you. Let me move swiftly then on to number 8, Broadland Health and Wellbeing Partnership, which I was thinking usually Mike talks to us about financial sort of things, long list of financial things, but I got confused. I thought, oh my God, have I picked up the wrong agenda? James can't have, you know, got it wrong because he never gets anything wrong. Thank you. We're over to Jake and Mike to present on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the annual briefing provides an update on the activities and spending of the Broadland Health and Wellbeing Partnership. So since its inception in May 2022, the Broadland Health and Wellbeing Partnership has cemented its position as a place-based convener sitting alongside place boards under the wider integrated care system within Norfolk and Waveney. So the partnership is made up of organisations from public health, adult social care, children's services, Department of Works and Pensions, and many of our vibrant VCSE sector organisations. With prevention being at the heart of everything that the partnership does, we have a collective mission to work together to improve the health and well-being of communities in Broadland, and a shared vision that every person in Broadland will have equal opportunities to a healthier, happier life. You'll see in the briefing just a few of the exciting projects that the partnership has delivered, as well as some of those that are being scoped across the district. Particularly proud of the work that we're doing to start our journey on co-production, using World Cafes as a tool for community engagement, as well as projects like Mindful Towns and Villages, expanding that provision for grassroots level conversation, particularly focused on children and young people, with 200 champions being trained. This is a real opportunity to work together to drive forward place-based change, positively impacting on health inequalities. And I'll pause for any questions.
Thank you. Has anybody got anything they'd like to ask? Eleanor?
Yes, well, thank you very much for the report. It's really good to see all the things that are being done. Fantastic. Something that I'm interested in, but I don't know how it would fit in with the Health and Wellbeing Partnership, is the realm of planning and health, because it has a huge impact when we plan new developments on the health of a community. And I just wondered how we work as a council, firstly in terms of the internal the departments, how they dovetail together. So how does planning influence our health and wellbeing partnership? And I also note that in planning, when we get a plan that comes forward, we don't have county council as a statutory consultee on health, which seems to me a little bit of an omission. So I don't know whether that might happen in the future or whether that's been considered, because I wonder sometimes whether we have departments and then they're not perhaps, as I said, dovetailing together very well on issues like health.
Thank you. So I'll take the point about county being a consultee, because actually I wasn't aware of that, and I'll talk to Ben tomorrow about how that might. And I know highways is, but in terms of the health agenda, internally we actually work really closely as a team. So the communities team and various teams work well with planning operationally. It's an interesting point, and how do we bring planning into that health and wellbeing partnership to look at that long-term stuff? We are looking at that kind of whole play shaping work at the moment. So it's an interesting point. So I'll go away and do some scoping out with Ben, and I'll come back with some ideas, because it's right that the long-term planning objectives is in terms of, particularly when we see young people and what have you, and we'll see that in September. Young people want practical health, wellbeing type spaces. Are we really bringing that in together? So yeah, so there's some interesting ideas. So I'll take that away as a point to explore with the partnership, and take it away and come back. Thank you.
Has anybody else got anything they'd like to say? Can I? Peter first.
Try that one. There's always things I think. Yes. Thank you. I must say, appreciate the report, and I'm very pleased to see that there has been scope included for the coverage of men's and support for men's mental health, which, as we've all seen for some very tragic cases recently, there is a call for. I just hope that we can see that these programs are supported and the public are made aware that they do exist. Thank you.
Been learning it all from Steve, haven't you, how to use this? Sorry. There's probably some training available. Yeah. Can I just, I mean, I know that there's a large element of health that's dealt with by county, who take on a greater sharing role. One of the things that I notice within the area I represent, the area where I live, the area where I work, is access to things like dentistry is a major issue. There's also I spent £435 on 2 fillings yesterday. 2 fillings. I mean, it's astonishing. And yeah, it's you can't get an NHS dentist; they keep dropping out. I'm wondering to what extent there is the ability for the council to work with members of parliament and the county on these issues. I noticed, I saw yesterday in Parliament the new member for North Norfolk, and I'm not waving the flag just because he's the same political party as me, but he was asking about the funding that is put aside for to be spent within communities, having been reclaimed. If it's not fully spent within a certain period, it gets taken and given to other communities to spend their money because there's no services available, and therefore local councils and authorities don't have the time then to buy in to those facilities because there's a long lead-in time for getting something set up on the ground. I know we're doing the social prescribing and taking that on. Is this something which can even be looked at by the district council, or is this something that we have to reach out to other partners with?
Certainly we can, because as well as the Health and Wellbeing Partnership, we also sit on the Place Board, which is the kind of operational secondary care type activity for the NHS. So we have got the ability to influence. So this is something that certainly I know that, I've attended a recent event at the UEA, so they're looking to bring a dentistry school into the UEA. And the idea being that if you train as a dentist in Norfolk, you're more likely to stay in Norfolk. So that's one way of doing it. But there were some really interesting ideas around dentistry, around their private practices. So do we need, as a system, why do they need their own building? Could they be in shared with other buildings? And that's something, again, in terms of, we were talking planning earlier, why aren't we designing in more sort of kind of health hubs rather than just individual buildings? So there's a number of things we can do. So again, I'll take that away because we can influence and we can lobby, and certainly something with our MPs, because a lot of this is national funding. But the funding, interestingly, with the ICB, the funding is there. What they can't do is they get the dentists in to actually do the work. So how can we influence that? But that's certainly something that I can take away, and then we can look at that. And I'll bring that back if that's okay, Chairman.
Thank you. The other thing that I know from when I was I substituted on the health overview thing at county last year, that there's a shortage of pharmacies within Norfolk now. There's a lot of pharmacies closing. I know we lost one recently in Drayton. Yes, we had two. We're down to one there now. But it's getting harder. And I know that again, there's a shortage of pharmacists around. But when you look at a new area being developed, for example, Rackheath probably is the case. But I can remember when I was a councillor in North Norfolk, someone sat down with a plan of what Fakenham might look like. So I was councillor there in 30 years' time, and they drew on a map where a new school might go if it ever went in. But of course, no point did we ever. There might be a new doctor's surgery, but there's not necessarily a new pharmacist going in. Now I know you can't because that's a commercial decision, but for a business about its viability. But again, there are communities in Norfolk now who have got no local doctor's surgery. The nearest pharmacy might be Aylsham. I'm assuming there's still one in Aylsham. Two. I think it is for that. So, but you're right, you've got some long drives, and people live in quite rural and remote communities. So I don't know whether there's, again, something which I'm just probably waving a flag in the air and just sort of in hope more than expectation. But I'm wondering if you've got any views on that.
So certainly, a really good example that we've seen recently is Wyndham. So Wyndham GP, they built themselves a new GP practice, and they invited the pharmacy to come in with them. So you walk into a building, you've got the pharmacy on the right, the GP practice on the left, it's all one building. So again, really thought through planning. So it attracted a pharmacy in because it hasn't got those massive overheads that an individual builder has. So, so that's something that again we can explore, and I'll talk to. I've got a long chat with Ben. I think tomorrow to talk through a planning just about actually how because none of this is quick wins, but actually there's long-term view of planning about how do we plan in services. And pharmacy is a really good primary care type resource that they can actually make a big difference. And for a lot of people, they can't afford or can't travel to a long distance for pharmacy. So if we can make that available, and we see pop-up shops and pop-up areas in key cutting and all sorts. Well, why can't we merge all these together? So you have pharmacies in buildings that already exist and pop-up banks and everything. There's a whole range there that we could be exploring in a better better, but that's a long-term planning, but we need to do that now and we need to lobby our MPs for it as well. But yeah, I'll certainly pick that up as well, Chairman.
Thank you. Eleanor?
Thank you. Yeah, in terms of health promotion in the community, have there ever been, or are we planning to do any particular health promotion courses and activities? So, I've obviously had a look to see what you are doing, but I'm just thinking in terms of the health service doesn't have the time or the resources or the people to run health information courses and health promotion courses. So, for example, in a community building, let's take a central community building in an area like, I don't know, the Dussindale Centre. If there were regular courses run, say once a month on, 1 month it was on stroke prevention, another month healthy heart, another month diet, etc., rolling programme, it wouldn't, I don't think, be too expensive to host. You can get experts in to talk about those things. You can even get experts from charitable organisations, for example. They're often very knowledgeable. But the advantage of that is you're not merely providing people with information, you're giving people a chance to be able to communicate and ask questions. Often people have very similar questions. They just might not have the chance to get to their doctor or their nurse or whatever to be able to ask those questions. They might feel happy to do that in a community setting. You could even broadcast them online as well at the same time. In terms of cost, as I said, I think it would be a relatively cheap thing to do, but probably quite effective. And has anything been thought of like that?
Yeah, thank you. I think in terms of the partnership, we're really lucky. Public health are quite an influential partner within the group. So I think it being data-led, I think there's a really good opportunity to probably look at areas where we know, for example, cardiovascular disease is particularly high, and maybe utilising some of the stuff that's already out there through adult learning and public health. So we're looking at particularly the mental health as an example. There's already provision that's funded through public health, so I think we've probably got a piece of work to look at the provision that is there and where we can target that, looking at the data. So I think that's absolutely something we could take away. Thank you.
Jonathan?
Yeah, just to lead on that, I can confirm that the Dussindale Centre is quite cheap. So yeah, you could do things like that. But with that, there have already been Reed Healthcare, who were doing the health checks for Norfolk County Council. They were using the Dussindale Centre, obviously as a community, a place where people knew, so they could come down and do it. There was a local lady, I don't know if it was for independent people or for businesses, but she was doing the cardiac, the whatever it is, the health CPR training, and she's done it down there and well like that. My actual questions regarding the World Cafes. Excellent news to see that obviously the 14,000 is there. Just to clarify on this, that the outputs of the project, there haven't been 25 people trained already. That's going to be what you look to do, and with the minimum of 60, is that you're doing an event and 60 people turn up, or is that all the different groups that are there? Because I'm just trying to picture in my head, if you do something like normally for the public and say we're doing something, getting 60 members of the public to turn up that's quite good. But I'm just looking at that to think that, this is obviously, that's the outputs that you want that will happen, or is that what's already been happening? Sorry.
So about the World Cafes in particular, absolutely the 25 for Broadland have been trained. So we have held that training for the Broadland cohort as well as the South Norfolk cohort. So we're across the two. And it is, the ambition is 60 to attend the event. So I think we've got some lessons learned in terms of engagement and how we do that. We've got quite a robust plan in place to ensure that we are maybe reaching those that are maybe seldom heard, or that we need to make a particular effort to reach out to. So working with primary care, for example, to identify cohorts of people, VCSE sector to help us identify those that maybe aren't online, for example. So we've got quite a robust plan to ensure that we get that reach with the ambition of 60 people to attend the World Cafe.
Obviously, leading on from what Eleanor said, would that be you'd have sort of like a guest, sort of like a subject that people could come along and hear about and everything like that? sort of look at that when they're having a cup of coffee and doing it?
Yeah, so the plan for the World Cafe will be to have a focus. So the focus will be on something quite broad. So we think about maybe healthy and resilient communities. And the way that a World Cafe works is an initial broad question is asked, and then you ask two supplementary questions that drill down into that, which we can then create a report from. So the idea is that the conversation is quite free, but with a focus on healthy and resilient, and more about the things that a community needs to enable them to be more healthy and resilient. So self-identified things that the partnership and our partners can support in delivering.
Right, excellent, thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, are the recommendations up? I'm sorry, I missed Caroline. Sorry, Caroline, you need to wave more profusely.
You had your head down. I work with the Broadland Older People's Partnership. Can you inform them when you have events like this? Because the older residents are very wise and they can definitely give their opinion across. Okay.
So we met yesterday.
Oh, good.
Initial conversation yesterday with the strategic partnership about exactly how we can bring the individual older people's forums into that conversation. So we started that yesterday. That was timely.
Thank you. I mean, the recommendations are to endorse your current work and offer any comments, which we've done. So, assuming that everyone's happy with the recommendations, all those in favour of recommendations to this. That was. I wish the cameras had been on, because we could have earned the council 250,000 from you being framed. Oh, sorry, £250 from you being framed. I've never seen someone so enthusiastic to vote.
And that's carried, Jim.
Nearly at Paul. And thank you very much for all of your answers and the work you put into this. Thank you. We move on to item 9, the customer experience programme. And can I just before Emma speaks on this, all of our comments will be noted within the minutes to make recommendation 1. So we don't have to recommend anything from recommendation 1. Basically, recommendation 1 is let's have a talk and find out what we say and what we think, and they will all be noted and fed into the process. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you. So in December, you may have remembered that in December, BDC committed to a customer experience programme and some investment to deliver our customer experience programme. That was set out with 3 core objectives, with one of them being around improving customer experience and satisfaction, generating efficiencies for the use of technology and streamlining our processes, and improving staff experience and access to business intelligence and data. The programme's a multi-year programme, so it will be delivered across several years. It's complex in its nature, and it will deliver a number of core things. So web forms and migration of web forms. Most importantly, the customer experience platform supported by integrations, and equally a behavioural change project around advertising our digital channels to our customers. As part of the investment, ONS requested regular oversight and reporting on the development of that programme. So the report that you've got in front of you is the first of many reports on the progress of that programme. It sets out only the known reporting milestones at this point. It is important to note that the programme is still in development. We are now only just going through early market engagement stages. We haven't appointed a supplier, so at this point we have recommended in the report only the reporting milestones that we know at this point in time. That doesn't mean to say that other reporting milestones might not become available as we appoint a supplier and we go through mobilisation. It is likely that at that point we will bring back further reporting milestones with some timescales as we mobilise on that project with a winning supplier. So the report proposes 3 key milestones at this stage, really related to member engagement. So milestone 1 being around a roadmap for customer journey mapping. We're expecting that in end of Q2, and really to bring that back to committee for input and views on the order of the road mapping of those services that we envisage lifting into the customer experience platform, and that largely based on a criteria around benefits realisation. Reporting milestone 2 that's proposed is an informal update at milestone 2. So this being the result of the procurement process. You may remember in the original signed off report that there was a delegation of award based on the CEP. So we are proposing as part of this report that milestone 2 is an informal email update based on the results of the procurement process. And that's expected end of quarter 3. The third and final milestone that you see in the report is on programme closure, and appreciate it being a multi-year programme that's in the future, but that will be at the point in which we'll be outlining the final position as we know at that point in time, with further benefits realisation to be reported as part of our ongoing project and programme governance framework. There's a final proposal around member engagement, and that sets out a proposal around creating a member user group related to testing and feeding back on new user journeys. So in summary, the report asks committee to give views on the proposed member engagement in the form of a member user working group, and add key milestone 1 to the work programme to allow for input on the proposed draft of the customer journey mapping, and the final in acknowledging that any post-procurement and contract award is received via email. Thank you.
Thank you. Has anybody got any questions to that to ask Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Colin. You're going to have a number of technologies and a number of partners to work with on this. So it's I'm probably very boring, but I find this really interesting. Would it be possible to have a programme plan and earned value management reports as we go through, so we can actually keep track of the various activities that are going ahead?
I've been on annual leave, so I'm finding it difficult to turn the microphone on and off today. So yes, absolutely, Councillor Newstead. So we have a programme plan that we have at this point in time. More than happy to bring that along as part of one of our key milestones. We might want to add that to the first reporting milestone with the customer journey map. And absolutely, there's a number of technologies. We may be working with several technology suppliers. We are refining our procurement approach at this point off the back of early market engagement, which effectively may mean that we work with one supplier who then works with other technology providers. We're not quite sure how that's going to work at this point in time, but that is part of our early market engagement as we refine going through to procurement. But absolutely, we can bring a programme plan alongside the reporting milestones. Thank you.
Shane.
Hi, I've been on a personal customer journey recently. It raised a question which I'll tell you in a moment. I had a WASP nest, so I went online, looked for a WASP nest thing, put in all the details, and my address didn't exist. So when I spoke to them in person, they said, well, we tried it and the address is there. So the question I suppose that I sort of came up with was, when these are developed, do they go across all systems and browser software so that everyone going on their computer, it will be compatible? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, so in relation to our website and where our web forms are hosted on the website, they absolutely will work across all browsers and be responsive across devices. In terms of whether your address is picked up or not, it's probably in relation to where that's pulling from the gazetteer. It's something I can pick up and go back to the service areas in terms of maybe doing some spot checks on the functionality of that. If we could pick up your address outside of this, and I can double check that for you. Thank you.
Sure. I think the other thing that came to mind was that when I got to that particular screen, I had no ability to be able to say, I can't get into this because it doesn't accept my address. There was no feedback in that particular one. You know, at the end where it says, was this helpful, yes or no? But you don't always get a why.
Yes, absolutely. And as part of our customer experience programme, we will be looking at how we regularly gather feedback through the service transactions and proactively either feedback transactions to customers or notice where transactions are going wrong and how we can put them right. Thank you.
Peter.
I'm going to have to express disappointment with this report. The issue of a project plan has already been mentioned, and frankly, when we discussed this previously, I think it was made abundantly clear that what we wanted to see was progress against target. And I don't feel that we have satisfied that wish here. I would have liked to have seen a full project plan with various milestones clearly marked, progress towards those milestones. Now, it seems that you might have this in existence, but you're not sharing it with us. Is that correct?
So it does exist in the sense that we have some high-level milestones that we are working to for procurement of the new software. If we refer to page 43 of the report, there's a table in there that gives you year one high-level breakdown of that in terms of website, customer experience platform and customer journey creation. Alongside that, it has a column that mentions progress. It gives you the update of the progress against the programme plan, high-level programme plan that was set out in the business case. And it also gives you an update on the savings released to date. Apologise that isn't showing it in a Gantt chart format. That's something we can work on for the next committee.
I'm truthful, I found that page a bit vague. Didn't really tell me in specific detail exactly where we were. And given that there is concern about doing this properly and nobody is arguing with the necessity of it, I'm simply arguing about us being able to understand exactly where the project is and whether it's on target and whether we need to do any remedial actions to make sure it is on target. So I'm not criticising the aim, but I am criticising the report in not giving me personally, I can't speak for the rest of the committee, sufficient reassurance that things are happening in the way they should.
So I can give you reassurance that it is running to time, cost and actually in terms of savings, we've actually released savings earlier as it sets out on page 43 of the report. What I can do is share the programme plan and then provide a little bit more detail around that table 3 that you can see on page 43 there, if that's helpful.
Ask Chairman that we submit this to the next meeting of overview and scrutiny, since that it's not available now. I think it should be something that we should be able to scrutinise at this meeting, since we can't do it tonight, but at a future meeting. Sorry.
Speaking too much. Is that something which we would be able to do without much agree or moving things around gender-wise?
Yes, Chair, you can add that to your future work programme, but as Corinne said, she can also email it outside of this meeting, and there will be another progress update from what I understand of this project coming forward. So it is up to the committee if you wish to see that at your next meeting. Then it's down to you to add that to the work programme.
Can we? I mean, I don't know how other members feel. I don't really want to have to get Corinne back just to present another set of data. That makes sense. However, if she could share that data with us, which the aim of what we're here to do today is to comment on what's been presented to us, and part of that can be that we'd like it presented in more detail, and that can be the feedback that we're giving for the next presentation.
Well, certainly the feedback I've tried.
Yeah, absolutely, and that will be
shared by.
Yeah. So if that's noted down there very clearly, then hopefully with the next feedback, which will be probably in the autumn or
Our next meeting.
the next chance for this to come back to us.
September.
Yeah. So not necessarily another report with the data, but I'm thinking for the next because we've asked for this to come back at regular intervals, and obviously there's a lot of things here about procurement and extra things and other things going out. Is there a chance of an update when we've gone through some of these things within this chart that we can have perhaps another update before the end of the year?
Yep, so I can, as part of milestone reporting 1, where we can bring in the proposed roadmap for input and feedback, we can also bring in the programme plan alongside the business case programme plan for you to check that against timescales.
That would be, from my point of view, that would be useful. Looking around at nodding heads, you've got a lot of nodding heads to that. If you could do that, thank you. But I do think I know what Vice Chairman is on about in the terms of the fact that there's some information there, but it doesn't jump out at you as to where we're at within that. So it may be too.
Always causes me concern.
Yes.
Thank you. Look for it.
Thank you, Jonathan. You'd like to say something?
Yeah, obviously, I am aware of the massive project that you've been taken on here. There's a lot of scope to do, obviously, a lot of work on the whole customer experience. That has been worked on for quite a few years, and I think we do need to get it right, because although, well, I'll come on to member engagement later, but that there are still, I think, some members who feel that unless you've got a phone line and that's the only thing you're going to do, that is, you know, anything's wrong. But from that point of view of knowing that, I think things have been changing and we have got to stay relevant to what we can do. So I think we have got to change on that. One of the points I would make is that we are talking about some quite big sums of money, both in how much we're sort of spending out. So we obviously want to get it right because we're spending out quite a lot of money. But obviously taking the two councils together, the 1.7 million. But then if you look at the sort of savings, that they're even greater. So it does look like it seems like a complete no-lose situation where you're spending that money but you're getting all the money back. We obviously have to make sure it's right and it's working. I've always said that the council is in a rather interesting place because obviously it's got a captive audience, and that is always the way to look at it, to say that just because we've got a captive audience means that we should still do the customer service the best we can. And yes, I think for a lot of people, picking up the phone and doing that is not what they're so used to apps and the way things work like that they don't pick up a phone anymore. So we have got to change, and I think businesses do change. What I think we should do with regard to member engagement is pick the people very carefully, because there are some that we're just going to have a very blinkered view of what they think should happen, but also cover how other organisations are doing things, because we aren't, you know, we're not sort of reinventing the wheel. We're just following on the lead from quite a few other customers and everything like that. But obviously how different companies handle it is very, you know, it's very interesting. I think, you know, the banks, for instance, would say that they're closing branches because they're saying everybody's using online, but they get a lot of stick from closing the branches. But I think we need to look at that they're doing it because they know that's sort of happening. And I was getting rather frustrated with the lack of Barclays branches in the city. And then I worked out you can just go to a post office and pay cash in there and it goes straight to your account literally 10 seconds later. And I hadn't realised that. So it doesn't matter how many branches they close, because I can, as long as there's a way to do something, it works. So yeah, the member engagement, I think, look at who we're getting and why we're getting them, and also have that, you know, that other companies are doing it, so other councils are doing it. So just have that information available so that it's not we're reinventing the wheel, so that it's the fact that you've got that information there to say, this is what other councils are doing, so that it's not, oh, we shouldn't be doing this, because if every other council's doing it, that does make a difference.
Can I just ask, it's sort of related to this, but we brought up at the last meeting that there had been problems with the garden waste collection money payments, and that came about through the introduction of a new system. The new system worked fine, but it seemed to knock out the old system. They were meant to work alongside each other. And you mentioned testing of systems. Do we pay for consultants to test? I know we are cutting down on the amount of consultancy we do, because we've been paying, I know, some large sums of consultants in the past, but are we then testing in-house all these systems? How much testing are we doing before things are going live? Because the worst thing that can happen is to do what's just happened with the garden waste and cause people concerns and worries, and people then just has a multitude of issues around that.
Yeah, so testing's normally split into two parts. You have sort of your functional testing around your technology, and then the other, which is around your user acceptance testing. So normally when we deliver a piece of software. It will go through that development cycle, of which a lot of the initial testing will be done by the company that wins the contract and is supplying that technology. At that point, they'll go through a stage of understanding what the issues are and fixing them. Then it will go through stages of where it should come to user acceptance testing, where testing will be done by the service areas in the instance where they'll be able to make sure it meets some of the requirements that were set out. It's at that point there should be a go or no go decision around whether it's there are outstanding bugs that we absolutely are of minimal impact and therefore we can release the product, or it isn't and it needs more fundamental development. So as part of the customer experience programme, that development cycle, we have defined how that will work internally, and obviously it will be a core stage payment quite often with the suppliers, and I would propose as part of going into procurement and our payment terms, one of the core stage payments should be on successful testing and implementation at that point, so you have some leverage if that goes wrong at any point in time.
I think the issue certainly about that last one though was that anybody who we procured to introduce the new system have said they'd done their job because the new bit worked fine, but somehow it overlapped with something in the old existing system and it stopped all those payments being collected. So it's just about being aware now, learning, you know, as long as the council has learnt its lesson from that error, that actually just, you know, assuming that everything previously was there was going to work when you introduce a new layer of something over the top. Everyone's aware of that. Thank you. Okay, well, we've noted James has noted all the comments we've made on this. It says there's just the other two recommendations on there. If everybody's happy that we move forward with this, all those in favour of the recommendations, assuming that everything that James has written down is within the minutes, I'm sure they will be. All those in favour?
That's carried, Chairman.
Sorry?
Reluctant.
Wouldn't be a meeting if you hadn't reluctantly voted for something. Thank you. And thank you, Corinne. And item number 10, Broadland Food Innovation Centre. I will say at the start, it does say it within this, but please be advised that we would need to exclude press and public from the meeting if Appendix 1 is discussed, basically the financial terms of everything within that. So I'll assume that we're not necessarily going to have to go through that element, but if anybody then wants to bring up anything within the report that's about that relates to Appendix 1, can you sort of save it or indicate that you would like to raise something about that, and then after we've done the rest of the questions, we'll close the meeting and deal with that one issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So the paper in front of you outlines the progress made at the Broadland Food Innovation Centre. The development received significant funding from both the European Regional Development Fund and the New Anglia Local Enterprise Partnership, which both came with certain requirements of the funding. So the centre offers 13 BREEAM excellent rated food grade units. It has a test kitchen and conference and meeting space as well. And alongside this, there is a comprehensive support package for both innovation support and for the wider food cluster development. So the centre opened in autumn 2022, and all of the units are either now fully occupied or at the point of agreeing heads of terms. The support programme delivered significant benefits for the wider cluster. Those outputs are all shown in Appendix 2 for you. These include the introduction of 118 new to the firm products and 48 enterprises exploring into new markets as well. All income and costs associated with the Food Innovation Centre are separately accounted for and according with the funding agreements and the council's requirements. Any questions?
Well, yes, but I don't know.
Does anybody else have anything they'd like to say? Jonathan?
We'll start on the positive. yeah, this is obviously an excellent project that we've got involved with. The fact that obviously it seemed that we were getting everything that we really wanted from this, it was brilliant. I've just got a couple of questions regarding the 3.10, sort of the budget and the actuals. There, obviously, you know, we obviously you know, this is a new venture and everything like that. I was just a bit concerned that some of them were a bit, some of them are, you know, one way and some are the other way, if you know what I mean. But it just seemed to be that they were a bit way out on quite a lot of them. I don't know if they've got any sort of lessons learned from that, or when we come to do the next budget, how it's is it gonna be the same sort of thing, or?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Some of those values are a result of how rigid we are with our financial planning and the way that we manage finances at the council. We work from financial year to financial year, and some of the project or construction completion works carried into the subsequent financial year. So these budgets were set intended to be purely revenue, managing the centre for occupancy, for letting out the units, etc., etc. Those values are confused by some of the values that were accrued as part of the construction, some of the revenue elements of the building, and then the grant funding that was delivered in the subsequent financial year. We've showed them in their raw nature because it evidences the complexity and the challenge in managing those budgets in such a way. I'm relatively pleased with the accuracy of many of those lines, particularly around things like waste disposal, electricity, the core functions of managing the centre. Of course, there are lessons learned. This was a new building. We weren't sure exactly how it was going to be used and the costs associated. But if you strip out those construction costs which fed into the financial year 23-24, the values are actually pretty good.
No, that's excellent. Obviously now it's where we're talking about getting it fully full. We know that obviously now it'll sort of generate itself, if you know what I mean. And obviously having all the units full is amazing. That's just really sort of really positive. But then it is that when we were talking about this is obviously Norfolk and stuff the only sort of really thing happening like this. So I guess that there is that feeling that we've given people the chance to do it. Yeah, I haven't got a problem with the figures. I was just saying that obviously if you know what's going on with them, that's brilliant. And obviously each year that'll obviously now it's full. I think it'll probably stay full for forever now, because I think if you ever have a space, I think there'll be a list of people who are sort of trying to get in there. So that's brilliant.
Eleanor.
Yes, thank you for the report. I have to say that when I was a relatively new councillor, I wasn't entirely sure about this project and how it was going to work. But when I went on a visit to go and see the centre, and at the time, certainly not all of the units were full, but I found that really, really valuable. So I don't know if that might be a possibility for some of our new members who might be interested in visiting. And in addition, my only other question is about advertising the work that the council's done in this regard. Are we going to have more publicity going out to promote this project and let people know what's going on? Yeah.
Great, thank you for the questions. Always happy to facilitate a field trip. So if the chair wants to organise an ONS trip to the Food Innovation Centre, we'd be happy to accommodate such a request. When it comes to marketing and promotion of the work that's being done, the Broadland Food Innovation Centre and associated cluster and innovation work have their own dedicated websites. They're updated consistently, and we share some of those in the communications we send out from the council to our businesses. You'll see that it appears often. There are case studies appearing in the Broadland News, for example. So we use as many avenues as we have at our disposal.
Peter.
Sorry to be negative yet again. Actually, I'm not that sorry. You answered one of the questions I was going to ask. What is the actual occupancy rate? Did I understand you to say it's now approximately or soon to be fully occupied? Okay. Well, why wasn't that in the report? Where was it? I missed it. Right. Well, it didn't stand out to me as an actual figure that I was looking for. But anyway, you've answered the question. I'm less happy about those figures I look at the rental income, budgeted 330,000, actual income 97,000.
I think we mentioned the figures that we have to go.
Well, these figures are actually in the main part of the report. They're not in the confidential part of the report.
Thank you, Simon. Just want to clarify. Thank you.
So, I mean, that to me doesn't give me great comfort. In fact, it gives me discomfort. So, how do you address that?
Oh, it's me. Yeah, great question. There's been lots of learnings on this project. This is was a new venture for officers to support and deliver an innovation centre with guidance and support from other partners. One of the things we've quickly established is the time differential between heads of terms and a tenant moving in. There has been for some of the tenants more fit out works than we would have anticipated, and some of those have been complex, not straightforward, and time consuming. So that time lag is the primary cause of that discrepancy between the expected rental income and the actual. Now we've got more than 12 months operational experience of managing the centre. We're better prepared to forecast those time discrepancies between agreeing and entering into or the payment starting. And of course there were some commercial decisions made around rent-free periods, which we may or may not have been aware or factored in totality at the beginning of the financial year, which would have been done, some time in advance of the financial year. So it's primarily the time lag between heads of terms and a tenant occupying the unit. But of course, there are some additional commercial arrangements as well for particular tenants, for all tenants. That will be factored into future years' budgeting for the centre.
So if I were to ask this question in 12 months' time, what would you anticipate I would expect to see?
I think we'd be looking for the same thing, a rental income budget, which is matched by a rental income actual. So we can demonstrate to you all that we are predicting, in broad terms, accurate valuations for the rental income to be accrued by the centre.
So is the budget likely to be much less than 330,000?
Offhand, I couldn't tell you what the budget is for this year, but I'll certainly provide a written response to members if that's the wish. We can set out the actual predicted budgets for the Food Innovation Centre this year, and you can hold us to account for those.
A couple of other questions. I would like to know when you anticipate break even. And I'd also like to know when you anticipate making a profit, which can then be ploughed back into the business or whatever.
Good question. What do we mean by break even? Could you explain, please?
When do we get to the point where the income and costs are equal?
We have budgeted this year, although I can't give the specific values, that the income and costs will be equal this financial year. I remain supremely confident. The centre, sorry, of course, the centre will have revenue ups and downs throughout its tenure, and we can't necessarily, well, there are some external influences that we can't control. Tenants may choose to leave, tenants may not join the centre, and there may be additional delays in addition to the delays I've described. What we have set out this year is a budget which we consider to be reasonable based on the best available evidence, working with professional advisors and others. We're confident that over a period of time, so a period of 3, 4, 5 years, the centre will be break even. There will be individual challenges in individual years, which will be balanced out by the reserve which is accrued because of the net zero cost for the centre. That's a very long explanation to say that we have set a net zero budget for this year, and I'm confident that we will get close to achieving, if not achieve, that budget.
Just one other thing on that, the centre cannot make a profit for the first 20 years. any funds generated by the site must be reinvested into the Food Enterprise Park. So this is why the funds are kept separately. So in some years, if there is a deficit, it will be kept into this holding account, and then the surplus at the end of last year similarly has been put into that holding account to be reinvested into the site.
Apologies for using the term profit. Obviously, I meant surplus. And the surplus would obviously be reinvested. I did understand that. So my apologies for using the term loosely. It won't happen again. Well, I can't promise that, actually.
Tony, I think you want to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wholeheartedly accept the fact that your budget versus accruals for the first year are quite different. This, to me, reads that we have a surplus. With first year, there was a surplus of about 100,000, effectively 101,000 was as near as damn it. Some of the forecasting was way out, which is the concern shown by my colleague the other side of the room. What steps have there been taken to ensure that the items where we are way out budget versus actuals have been taken to ensure that doesn't happen again?
As I say, we've learnt a great deal from the first 12 months of operation for the centre, and we have a better idea about the likely costs to be incurred and the income generated through tenancy occupation. That's been factored into the budget setting for this year, and we'll continue to reflect on the accuracy and the challenges associated with those individual budget lines. And that will be a learning experience as we go through. Budgets, we will do our best to get the most accurate budget possible, but there will be some, as I've described, some external influences that affect our ability to achieve those.
Caroline.
Yeah, I was a bit concerned about the rental income. Adding up what you've got already there, I make that about £133,000 a year. If you add 3 more units on there, that's not going to make up to 330,000 a year. To explain that.
So those tenants weren't in at the beginning of last year. So yes, we received £100,000. However, lots of those were in mid-year and later on.
The ones you have at the moment. So that'll be for 1 year. You've got all those units occupied. That comes into about £133,000 a year. You've got 3 units left to rent out. How is that going to make it up to 330,000 a year?
Are we all right to cover that one once it's closed off, because that relates to the information that's in Appendix 2 or Appendix 1, if that's okay? Thank you.
Which can overlap with Lacey's question.
It's like ping pong. The events have fallen off, so you projected 18 for the end of October, and we're currently at 10. Have we got events planned? And they're going to help with Eleanor's point of publicising the good work that's being done.
We get an update every month, so that was the information that we'd received at the end of March. They are due to have completed the 18 events by the end of October. They have got many more events organised. They have held some already since March, and they have got more due in. So that's a contracted output. So it's on one of the contracted measures with performance linked to it.
Cabinet Member Martin, you'd like to speak?
Yeah, I would actually like, if possible, for George to explain where the building costs have increased. Because there's a very easy explanation why some of these appear to be really way out. And I think actually a line-by-line explanation of which ones have been affected by the building costs would actually help put people's minds at rest, because they are very, very skewed because of the way we do the accounting, and the building wasn't finished. That cost came into this budget, and so it skewed it. I mean, the saviour was, the other grants line is the amount of money to pay for it also comes into this budget. So it balanced it out, but I think perhaps that might make people much clearer.
I think to avoid any ambiguities about anything, so we can say what we'd like, I will go to the exclusion of press and public. And I move that the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining items of the business because otherwise information which is exempt information by virtue of paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act of 1972 as amended by the Local Government Access to Information Variation Order 2006